This is Mary Dostroff. I'm a member of the membership group or committee, and this is Anna Lowenberg, who is one of the people who keep Reading Aloud going. Does that sound better?
Yeah. Well, I call myself the leader, not the teacher, because I'm really not teaching, but the leader of the group, and I did originate the group.
How long has it been going on here at the Senior Center?
Since 2005. It started with an entry in the program when no one signed up for it, and then the next time people started signing up.
Okay, so about how many people did you start with?
Well, it's always been about the same because we mostly met in the mezzanine room where we're sitting around a smaller table than this arrangement. And so the size of the group is kind of limited to how many people can squeeze around the table. So we've been anywhere between 8 and 12.
Okay, and how often do you meet?
We've come to meet every term for a set of sessions, such as 4 or 5 or 6 sessions in the course of a term. And they would always be one week after the other, but not going over the whole term.
Now, do you share your reading with other groups? Do you have programs?
We have, as I mentioned, we've always done a combination of what you could call courses, where we've chosen a topic or a set of poets, or a country. Sometimes we've done poems in translation and so on, for the set of sessions, one topic. And I bring in poems typically, and members of the group bring in poems. And we always bring them in copies so that we not only listen, but see the poem, because for some of these poems you couldn't get them very well just by hearing them. And more, as people have been longer in the group, they contribute more or a larger proportion of what's contributed, and I contribute somewhat less.
Now, do you,
But you asked the question about do we share it with other
Yes.
groups. We have, from the start, so I started to talk and then I got carried away, but we've always given some public readings. At the beginning, I think there was one the first year and one the second year, and since then they've been somewhat more frequent. And we've not only given public readings at the center, but we've given them at other places as well. So we represent the center when we move out and read in front of other groups.
And do you get positive feedback from your readings?
Yes, very much so, and that is very encouraging. I mean, in the group itself, we are all so enthusiastic about what we're doing. Everyone is so enthusiastic, which is why they keep signing up. But when we read, for the most part, we get a lot of comments and a lot of enthusiasm. Not always.
I've been to several and I've enjoyed them all. Do you also feel like in a group that you get to more of an understanding of some of these poems?
Definitely.
Because sometimes the poem you'll read it and you really don't quite get the essence.
Yes, and that's the problem with public readings. We've just recently started supplying people in the audience with copies of the poems so that they too can see them as they're being read. At the beginning, I was very much against that because I didn't want to read to an audience where they were all looking like this instead of looking like that. But it does help the audience, I think, to see the poems. But in answer to your question, at the beginning, I was very reluctant to have too much discussion because I'm not an English professional, I mean, I wasn't even an English major. But more and more, it just seemed natural to talk somewhat about the poems after we read them.
What you are is a volunteer contributor to the Senior Center.
That I am, that I definitely. And I've always been a lover of poetry and of reading it aloud. It goes way back to childhood.
Good.
It is something different that we're doing,
Okay.
that it's just a sitting around the table, but with people able to come in and listen.
On 4 Thursdays in December 2011, the Reading Aloud group will gather at the center room 208 to read poems, a different topic each Thursday, in an informal setting to which the public is invited to come in and listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be very nice if
Yeah,
that could get out there.
if that
Yeah.
could get out,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Blessed Day by Philip Levine. First with a glass of water, tasting of iron, and then with more and colder water over his head, he gasps himself awake. He hears the cheep of winter birds searching the snow for crumbs of garbage, and knows exactly how much light and how much darkness is there before the dawn. Gray and weak, slips between the buildings, closing the door behind him. He thinks of places he has never seen but heard about. Of the great desert his father said was like no sea he had ever crossed, and how at dusk or dawn it held all the shades of red and blue in its merging shadows. And though his life was then a prison, he had come to live for these suspended moments. Waiting at the corner, he feels the cold at his back and stamps himself awake again. 7 miles from the frozen, narrow river. Even before he looks, he knows the faces on the bus. Some going to work and some coming back, but each sealed in its hunger for a different life, a lost life. Where he's going or who he is, he doesn't ask himself. He doesn't know and doesn't know it matters. He gets off at the familiar corner, crosses the emptying parking lots toward Chevy Gear and Axle number 3. In a few minutes, he will hold his time card above a clock, and he can drop it in and hear the moment crunching down, or he could not, for either way the day will last forever. So he lets it fall. If he feels the elusive calm his father spoke of and searched for all his short life, there's no way of telling, for now he's laughing among them, older men and kids. He's saying, "Damn, we've got it made." He's lighting up or chewing with the others, thousands of miles from their forgotten homes, each and every one his father's son.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the flavor of a lot of his poems.
Yeah.
I think the ending is a tiny bit sentimental, given what you had before. But as a description of getting up in the morning in the dark and going to work, I think it's... What do you think, Rob?
I think that the first side needs some more punctuation.
Well, you read no punctuation
You did.
before. Maybe this is a qualification now for being a laureate. That you don't punctuate.
It's true.
Yeah, I guess he often doesn't. I mean, he's not totally without it.
No.
But, yeah. Okay. Carrie, do you want to do the next one, coming home from the post office?
Coming home from the post office. On Sunday night, we would see the women returning from an evening with God, their faces glowing with faith and the hard sweat of their faith. They would sing separately or together, and when the bus stopped and one got carefully off, the sisters would shout news of the good days ahead and the joys of handmaidenship. I remember an evening in April when I passed in and out of sleep, and the woman who stood above me stared into my eyes as though searching for a sign that might bring light softly falling among the dark houses we stuttered by. When I closed my eyes, I saw cards, letters, small packages, each bearing a particular name and some burden of grief or tidings of loss. Names like my own passed moment by moment into the gray sacks that slumped open-mouthed. On strong legs she stood easily, swaying from side to side. A woman in a green suit, a purse held in one hand, a hanky folded in the other. Her pale eyes held mine easily each time I wakened, and so I wakened not into the colorless light from overhead, but into the twin mysteries of a life in God. When I fell back into my light sleep, I saw a great clear river running between the houses I knew and a bright shore of temples, glowing public squares, children in long robes flowing, those I loved climbing a high hill toward a new sun. Hours later, the driver softly wakened me with a hand on my head and a single word, and I stepped lightly into the world, my shoulders hunched, my collar turned up against the hour, and headed down the still street. The new spring winds groaned around me. The distant light of no new star marked me home.
I thought that was for you, isn't it? That's your time.
I walk among the rows of bowed heads. The children are sleeping through 4th grade so as to be ready for what is ahead. The monumental boredom of junior high and the rush forward tearing their wings loose and turning their eyes forever inward. These are the children of Flint. Their fathers work at the spark plug factory or truck bottled water in 5-gallon sea blue jugs to the windows of the suburbs.
Widows is widow.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
These are the children-
the
yes.
fathers are the water delivery people, right? To the widows.
Yes,
Yeah.
I just tapped it. My
Why don't you begin
allergies.
to that? These are the children of Flint.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are the children of Flint. Their fathers work at the spark plug factory or truck bottled water in 5-gallon sea blue jugs to the widows of the suburbs. You can see already how their backs have thickened, how their small hands, soiled by pig iron, leap and stutter even in dreams. I would like to sit down among them and read slowly from the book of Job until the windows pale and the teacher rises out of a milky sea of industrial scum, her gowns streaming with light, her foolish words transformed into song. I would like to arm each one with a quiver of arrows so they might rush like wind there where no battle rages, shouting among the trumpets, ha, ha! How dear the gift of laughter in the face of the 8-hour day, the cold winter mornings without coffee and oranges, the long lines of mothers in old coats waiting silently where the gates have closed. 10 years ago, I went among these same children just born in the bright ward of the Sacred Heart and leaned down to hear their breaths delivered that day, burning with joy. There was such wonder in their sleep, such purpose in their eyes closed against autumn, in their damp heads blurred with the hair of ponds. And not one turned against me or the light. Not one said, I am sick, I am tired, I will go home. Not one complained or drifted alone, unloved, on the hardest day of their lives. 11 years from now, they will become the men and women of Flint or Paradise, the majors of a minor town. And I will be gone into smoke or memory, so I bow to them here and whisper all I know, all I will never know.
Wow, that packs a punch. They do. I can't figure out why the book of Job would be so appropriate. It's a little on the discouraging side, but there is discouragement in here, yeah. And I mean, he says about the 11-year-olds that their backs have thickened and their small hands are soiled by pig iron already. I mean, they're helping their father, or, yeah.
Coming home, Detroit, 1968. A winter Tuesday, the city pouring fire. Ford, Rouge, sulfurs the sun, Cadillac, Lincoln, Chevy, gray. The fat stacks of breweries hold their tongues. Rags, papers, hands, the stems of birches dirtied with words. Near the freeway, you stop and wonder what came off. Recall the snowstorm where you lost it all. The wolverine, the northern bear, the wolf caught out, ice and steel raining from the foundries in a shower of human breath. On sleds in the fall sun, the new material rests. One brown child stares and stares into your frozen eyes until the light changes and you go forward to work. The charred faces, the eyes boarded up, the rubble of innards, the cry of wet smoke hanging in your throat. The twisted river stopped at the color of iron. We burn this city every day.
This is a still darker one.
It is.
Yeah, and that one really resonates with me. Yeah, yeah.
We're
Not
talking
so
most about
much-
foundries,
Not
right?
so much Detroit, but when I was a little kid,
Yes.
my grandmother's home was in a town that had an American Crayon Company factory that is now shuttered and boarded up. And the fire truck went
But
past
did
her
this
house
already
every day.
start in Detroit as about 1968? But they,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this one is a little hard to get at. So he's in a car, right? He's in a car, he sees a child, but the child is on a sled. The sled is material from the factory, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the child is just standing there. But then, my goodness, the ending, wow. And I think that's a very good last line. Okay, now really it's something else.
Even the river groans.
Judith?
At the Fillmore? At the Fillmore. The music was going on. The soldier paced outside, his shoes slowly filling with rain. Morning would walk early over the wards of the wounded, row after row of small white faces dragged back. She dozed in the ladies, wondering should she return. This warmth, like the flush of juice of the pale stem of the flower, she'd known before, and its aftermath, seeing the sisters and the promises again. The music was going on, a distant pulsing only from the wilderness of strobes. He climbed back up the crowded stairs, cloaked in a halo of rain, and no one noticed or called. Nor were those the waters of the heart she heard rushing in the booth beside her. She stubbed her cigarette and rose. The music was going on, gathering under the turning lights, mounting in the emptying hall toward the end. They stood blinded a moment, and then she offered herself to his arms and opened her arms to him, both of them smiling as they claimed the other and whatever else was theirs.
Now, what do you think it does to divide this poem into little 3-line sections that do not stop at the end of each section? Almost, some stop, but most of them don't. What does it do?
Well, it clearly segments things, but I'm not sure I
Yeah,
understand.
doesn't segment the sense of it really,
No.
but
It's
it
a
gives it that
counterpoint.
rhythm to
I
it.
Rhythm.
think it doesn't. I think it causes you to pay more attention to it. It somehow is more freighted with meaning because it is broken into these
Right,
pieces.
and you know, his shoes slowly filling with rain kind of emphasizes that it's raining. And what do you make, she dozed in the ladies, so she's sitting in a book in the ladies' room, right, a stall. The warmth like the flush of juice up the pale stem of the flower, she'd known before and its aftermath, seeing the sisters and the promises again. She got pregnant, right?
She did.
Yeah,
She had
and
an
she's
abortion.
pregnant again. Yeah.
Snow. Today the snow is drifting on Belle Isle, and the ducks are searching for some opening to the filthy waters of their river. On Grand River Avenue, which is not in Venice but in Detroit, Michigan, the traffic has slowed to a standstill, and yet a sober man has hit a parked car and swears to the police he was not guilty. The bright squads of children on their way to school howl at the foolishness of the world they will try not to inherit. Seen from inside a window, even a filthy one like those at Automotive Supply Company, the snow which has been falling for hours is more beautiful than even the spring grass which once unfurled here, before the invention of steel and fire. For spring grass is what the earth sang in answer to the new sun, to melting snow and the dark rain of spring nights. But snow is nothing. It has no melody or form. It is as though the tears of all the lost souls rose to heaven and were finally heard and blessed with substance and the power of flight, and given their choice, chose then to return to earth, to lay their great pale cheek against the burning cheek of earth and say, "There, there, child."
You did a very nice job with the amount of pause at lines that didn't really stop. As an expert on snow
snow.
poems,
Can
what
I
do you
take?
think of this one?
I like it.
Yeah,
I
like
think we
it
can
too.
use this again. You know, he's more like a painter in some ways than a poet.
Yeah, very, very descriptive. Okay, I'll read right on. Darkness gathering in the branches of the elm, the car lights going home. Someone's beautiful Polish daughter with a worn basket of spotted eggs, an elbow of cabbage, carrots, leaves, chicken claws scratching the air. She comes up the cracked walk to the stairway of shadows and lost dolls and lost breath. Beautiful Polish daughter with hands as round and white as buns. Daughter of no lights in the kitchen, no one sits on the sofa, no one dreams in the tub. She in her empty room in heaven, unpacking the basket piece by piece on the silent enamel table, with a little word for each, a curse for the bad back and the black radish, and 3 quick spits for the pot. That's a superstition. If there was something good, you would look so that the evil eye wouldn't do. Yeah, so that's what it's definitely a superstition. I'm sure it's not only a Jewish superstition, but it is one. You know, I think this is lovely. But I mean, it's interesting that he identifies her only as Polish, but pretty clearly.
There's quite a Polish community in Detroit. There has been, because at one time we had a young woman who lived with us who was from Poland. She came over with her sister and 2 of her brothers, and she had been in concentration camps during World War II. And so her big dream was to marry a man with a red convertible. This is what Teresa wanted. And so she and her family ended up moving to Detroit. And the people who
With a red convertible.
yeah, where the people who had sponsored them to come to the United States went to visit them up there, and they came over to visit and see us afterwards, and they said, Teresa is married, the man has a red convertible, and she no longer speaks English, just Polish.
Oh, oh.
So, yeah.
My brother comes home from work and climbs the stairs to our room. I can hear the bed groan and his shoes drop one by one. You can have it, he says. The moonlight streams in the window and his unshaven face is whitened like the face of the moon. He will sleep long after noon and waken to find me gone. 30 years will pass before I remember that moment when suddenly I knew each man has one brother who dies when he sleeps and sleeps when he rises to face this life. And together they are the only one man sharing
And that together they are on.
And that together they are only one man sharing a heart that always labors, hands yellowed and cracked, a mouth that gasps for breath and asks, am I going to make it?
All night at the ice plant, he had fed the chute its silvery blocks. And then I stacked cases of orange soda for the children of Kentucky, one gray boxcar at a time, with always 2 more waiting. We were 20 for such a short time, and always in the wrong clothes, crusted with dirt and sweat. I think now we were never 20. In 1948, in the city of Detroit, founded by Delamoth Catholic Cadillac for the distant purposes of Henry Ford, no one wakened or died, no one walked the streets or stoked a furnace, for there was no such year. And now that year has fallen off all the old newspapers, calendars, doctor's appointments, bonds, wedding certificates, driver's licenses. The city slept. The snow turned to ice, the ice to standing pools or rivers racing in the gutters. Then bright grass rose between the thousands of cracked squares, and that grass died. I give you back 1948. I give you all the years from then to the coming one. Give me back the moon with its frail light falling across a face. Give me back my young brother, hard and furious, with wide shoulders and a curse for God, and burning eyes that look upon all creation and say, you can have it.
Home for the holidays. Does anyone give a shit? Not I, said the little brown mouse. And so to bed, said Mother. And no one was listening. But no one was listening. Praise the Lord, said the radio. The radio said, praise the Lord again. And the television turned its back on the room. Turnips for wisdom, eggplant for beauty, parsnips for ease, cabbage for size, a raw egg for the hair, a slice of ham to seize the hips, for the nose, foxglove and salt. For grace, ice cold water, poured down way up, look at it, poured from way high up to way down low. Everyone sits at the big table in the dark. The empty plates moon, the silverware stars, the napkins scrub their hands. I'm home, says the front door. The windows are deep in thought. The roof has taken off its hat. Nothing to do, chants the toilet.
So we can do that too. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.